Good afternoon, and welcome to The Road to Recovery, The Road to Freedom with Mark. This is my 28-minute slot every Friday, and Christmas is closing in real fast, and this is Black Friday. It's been hammering out on the radio. In fact, I heard 4 ads in a row. Black Friday, Black Friday, Black Friday, and I thought, hang on a minute. We didn't celebrate the 29th of November last year, and I didn't hear anybody explain to me exactly what this particular Black Friday is. Turns out, you know what it is. This is, of course, the first Friday after the great celebration of Thanksgiving, which we, of course, do not celebrate. So why we celebrate Black Friday after Thanksgiving is an absolute mystery. But I'll tell you what, to any retailers out there who have been bashing that all day, and I won't name you and shame you, but please, cut this crap out. We don't need another American celebration invented by retailers to try and get people to spend more money well out from Christmas. There's enough hardship going on in our society without further indenturing people into debt. It's not really a very good idea. I would suggest that it's socially irresponsible at this time of year. So perhaps the retailers want to have a little bit of a think about what they're doing. Now, as I was driving in, I was watching this hawk. I always like to watch the hawks. I consider them to be a good omen, and whenever there's a bit of a breeze up, there they are, cruising along. They're not the fastest, but they just look so amazing, so free when they glide, and that's the beauty about living in the Wairarapa and, you know, living in all these amazing places. I passed from Pahia to through Ekatahuna and Mount Bruce and right on into Marston every Friday to do the show, and I love to see the hawks whenever they're around, whenever there's a little bit of a breeze and I'm rocking and rolling. And the poor old hawks, they always get a stretch from, it used to be just the magpies, but in more recent times the plovers have worked their way in. And they're always going at the hawk, always 2 plovers on one hawk, and the poor old hawk gets twisted and turned every which way, and I really hate it. And if I could, I would put a bounty on plovers, nasty squawking creatures that they are. And it occurred to me that, you know, suffering from mental illness is just like that, because, you know, you stand out from the crowd, you're different and ostracised as a result and picked on, sometimes just by jealous little haters, sometimes by people who quite simply fail to understand you. And I know what it's like to be different. I have been all my life. And what I've come to realise is that you just need to be able to put up with certain things and be patient and know that in time things like that who annoy you will go away and become insignificant. And don't worry about things like that. Try and concentrate on positive things. And the reason I say that is that, you know, when I was a child, I was taught that we learn from our mistakes, and I've come to realise that that's not true. We don't really learn from our mistakes. We just learn not to do that stupid thing again. That's not really teaching us a lot. It's just telling us that mistakes are bad. It doesn't teach us how to succeed. And what I have found over a period of time, getting really good at doing a few things like writing and fishing. I'm pretty good at fishing. I always get fish wherever I go, pretty much. Not 100%, but not far off it. Even in a new place, it's not very hard at all. You just need to learn certain lessons. And what has become apparent to me over time is that you learn by your successes, by your victories. Celebrate and learn and analyse. And it is victory and success that teaches you how to succeed. It is not failure. And that is what we really need to teach everybody, really. Children, yes, but everybody in society, is that we learn by our successes and what we do right. And that teaches us a thought process where instead of saying, oh, I won't do that again, you're starting to say, oh, yeah, I will do that because I was successful doing that. And how did I do it? And what made me good at that? And so you learn much more quickly than going dole, dole, dole all the time and bashing your head against a brick wall. It's not really a good way to go. And I guess that's what makes me so very different, is that I look at the world in a different way. And I would suggest that people like me have a place because of that, because we look at things differently and have a different appreciation. It doesn't necessarily always make it right, it just makes it different and therefore worth considering, rather than making them same mistakes of the past, which we've always done. Things are starting to change now, and I think that's changing for the better. Well, I've got to make sure I don't overrun today, because I did that last week, and that's the trouble with doing stuff live, is that when you when you overrun, you just cannot wind that clock back. And I've always got far more to say than what the 28 minutes will allow. But I do want to say a special thank you to Arrow Radio and to all the sponsors and to Wairarapa TV for making these shows happen, because without them, people like me and many of the other people who do amazing programs on the show, we wouldn't have a voice, because we're not mainstream. We're not what the flock want to hear necessarily. We're different, and therefore in a minority, and often minorities don't get a voice. And if we've learned anything over the years, we've learned that actually minorities make a far greater contribution than what their proportion represents. They might only represent 10%, but they might be able to bear a third of the load. You just never know. You don't know until you try. And if you really are successful at something, you learn over time that you exploit every single resource available to you. You leave no rock unturned, you know. You learn little things. Sometimes they can be so important. It's kind of like having eureka moments, like when you're a child and all of a sudden you can understand your times tables and it works. And those things are so handy to have. And they are good exercises in certain fields of discipline, because discipline is not a single thing, it is a field. An ability to maintain a line of thought, for example, that sort of discipline. It's not an easy thing to do, and you have to kind of keep working back round, like I do, keep working back round to like mental illness, or how does this affect mental illness, how does this come into it? And what it is, mental illness is often being fractured. It is a lack of focus and discipline. And the way to work your way out of that is to do little exercises like reading. It's a very good one to get into, or gardening, or walking. These sort of simple little disciplines. And when I say reading, I mean, if you haven't read anything for a while, start off with newspapers. They're pretty insulting, but you can normally pick out one or two average bits out of them, and then work your way into magazines of interest, and then maybe informative books. And it's amazing how you can rediscover a love of reading again, and even visiting one or two books you might have read in your youth, and having a different perspective on them as an adult. So, you know, these are all good disciplines for anyone who was suffering from mental illness. As I say, walking or gardening. I'm getting back into gardening now, which is really quite something, watching things grow from seed. Right, better get on with the story today. Today's story, my friends, this is Stewart Island in the Milford Track. Many years ago, when I was married, my wife and I took our Christmas break early and decided to head down to Stewart Island for a few weeks. As we didn't have much time, we decided to fly as directly as possible from Wellington. My girlfriend Leonie was very organised and booked flights and accommodation well ahead of time. We flew directly from Wellington to Christchurch, then transferred to a smaller plane to Invercargill. We arrived in Invercargill on a Sunday, and it felt like a real step back in time to find everything closed with the exception of just one bar. We refuelled there and transferred to an even smaller plane for the flight to Stewart Island. The plane seated only about 12 people and was extremely noisy. Suddenly it became apparent just how isolated the island really was. That same plane ran out of fuel on the flight over about a year later with the loss of one life. I remember shouting over the engine noise just how concerned I was at the time that we flew over. Fovo Strait is far wider than it looks on a map, and Stewart Island is much larger. I could not wait to get off the plane, and I was glad to finally see the mown grass strip. The weather was in our favour, yet I felt glad we had chosen the plane over the ferry from Bluff. We were met at the plane by a bus that drove us down to Half Moon Bay, the small community of about 500 people living permanently on the island. There were very few shops, and life mostly circulated around the pub, a new coffee shop and a Department of Conservation Information Centre. Our accommodation on Stewart Island was only a short walk up the hill from the township. It was nothing flash, but featured a bush backdrop that was full of birds. Wood pigeons and tui were especially prolific and lined up in their dozens on power lines. The bush they lived in was extremely dense native and had not been ravaged by goats and possums like the mainland bush had been. I had never seen bush so solid, dark and foreboding. There is a track around the island, but it takes quite a few days to tramp and is reputedly very difficult and muddy. We decided instead to see what Half Moon Bay had to offer and have a relaxing time discovering for ourselves the bay's history and development. The home comforts of a good bed and a handy pub and restaurant won hands down. The restaurant featured fresh local produce like blue cod, which was a prolific fish in these parts and has a real melt-in-the-mouth quality. On our first day on the island, we gathered information of what was available to enjoy and checking out the small township of Half Moon Bay and the surrounding bush. The pub was a real focal point of the town, and our dinner there was one of the finest I've ever had. Our second day was spent touring nearby points of interest by water taxi. The amount of wildlife and untouched beauty of the water and bush were unbelievable. The wildlife was particularly prolific and seemed to show little fear of our presence. At one spot we saw the remnants of a bushmill that was set up a century ago. Some skilled and determined souls had sailed a steamship, run it aground there. Then they stripped out the engine to use it as a saw pit. Then they laid train tracks down as they felled the mature, beautiful rimu trees that grew there. They then rebuilt and refloated their ship, filled it full of rimu logs, and sailed out, leaving behind the tracks and saw pit to be reclaimed by the bush. All around, seals, penguins, shags and other birds were prolific. It was hard to believe we were still in the same country. On the third day, we went fishing on a charter boat. I was glad I had carted my own fishing gear down, as the stuff on the boat looked as if it had come off the ark. The first few spots turned up some smallish trumpeter, But then we hit a patch of blue cod. They were so prolific I was pulling them in 3 at a time and caught my legal limit in under an hour. Those with the boat's gear did not fare so well, but there was plenty to go around. Fresh blue cod is one of those meals that's hard to get sick of, and we dined like lords for days. Another day we spent on Ulva Island, which was the spot where the Department of Conservation, along with the locals, had made completely pest-free. A family lived there and kept about 500 traps going to keep it that way. It was a short, pleasant ferry ride to the island, and we were free to roam around for the day. It was a great privilege to see the superb wildlife around. As we wandered along quietly, kaka came crashing playfully through the bush. Red-crowned parakeets were ever present, but harder to spot high up in the trees. Weka abounded and were so tame they would pick food from my hand. The island is so abundant in native wildlife it was a real eye-opener as to how the mainland must once have been. All too soon, our stay at Stewart Island was over, leaving a wonderful lasting impression upon us. We headed to Te Anau for a night before heading off to tramp the Milford Track. Our accommodation at Te Anau was top-notch and featured a spa bath. Leone had the forethought to book the same place for the night we came back to the end of the track. We headed to the beginning of the Milford Track by ferry, which was accompanied by an interesting history lesson from the skipper. Numbers allowed on the track each day are strictly limited, and we were only allowed one night's stay at each hut along the way. On the ferry were a mixed bunch of people of various ages. One group were taking their mum, others took their kids. Our group on the ferry were the Freedom Walkers, who stayed at the huts each night, as opposed to the guided walks done for people wishing to do a day trip with a light pack. There was a reasonable level of fitness required to do the tramping either way, and I was worried about how hard it would be. The ferry landed us on the shoreline at the beginning of the track, and each little group headed off at their own pace down a wide, flat path. The bush surrounding the pathway was pristine, and the clear streams were full of fat brown trout. We were amazed by the sheer beauty of this place, and my fears were relieved by an easy 3.5-hour walk in. The pathway was so flat and clear it wasn't necessary to watch where we were walking, and we found it impossible to stop gazing upwards at the beautiful bush and wildlife. We felt transported to another world, and were glad for the easy walk in, as it gave us time to get used to the weight of our packs. The time flew by, and soon we had reached the first hut and cooked a meal in a well-outfitted kitchen. There were plenty of bunks too, although there were thousands of sandflies about. We had good repellent, and all the other groups of folk seemed similarly well equipped. I was nicely tired at the end of the day and slept well in my sleeping bag despite the ever-present sandflies. The next day we had a much longer 7 to 8 hour tramp over a lot of granite and much narrower pathway. It was much more demanding going, but we both got through unscathed, although very tired, and a hot meal was fantastic at the end of the day. We didn't need a clock, as we soon adjusted to going to sleep at dark and rising at first light. The third day we tackled McKinnon Pass, which was a steep pull up a granite mountain. It was hard going, but we were rewarded at the top with a half a dozen mountain kea, which showed only a little caution, always ready to rob the unwary. Their favourite trick was to drop a camera off a cliff face and fly down to play with the broken pieces. The pass was a steep granite low mountain pass with snow at the top. Yet the Kia seemed to thrive in the inhospitable environment. On the way down, we followed a clear mountain creek, steeply down uneven granite stairs. Our knees took a pounding, and we were soon complaining of the pain. It was a real hard tramp that day, and we were glad to finally get off the back of the pass. We stumbled into the hut that night and cooked up a tasty freeze-dried dinner. The rest of the tramp was a doddle in comparison, being quite flat and around small lakes. We had by now got used to the weight of our packs, and we were able to keep moving for much longer periods of time. We were also able to take in more of this rare and beautiful area, which had waterfalls pouring straight off granite cliffs down quickly into little lakes. There were also endless numbers of sandflies in the lower regions, and I was so happy to have some decent repellent. I could only imagine how miserable it would have been without. We chewed up the final few kilometres to the last hut on the tramp. All of the huts were really well equipped. Gas made for easy cooking and boiling water, and they had plenty of good bunk beds. This enabled each group to keep to themselves, and the kids kept out of our hair. Everyone seemed to manage the tramp quite well, even the oldest mum among the group. Our last day on the track was about half a day's tramp down to meet the ferry. It was a great opportunity for weary bodies to take their time and drink in the sheer beauty of the clear water and pristine bush. The good numbers of large native trees were awe-inspiring, and there were equally impressive numbers of birds that they supported. I was glad to finally reach the end of the track early and having a feed before the ferry arrived. I was tired and thoroughly thrilled that I was allowed to tramp the Milford. Its rugged beauty is really something that needs to be done to be fully appreciated. As the ferry slowly pulled away, I stayed at the back, looking back to the end of the track. It felt like we had a religious type of experience, such was the beauty of the rivers and falls in McKinnon Pass. We met the bus and headed back to Te Anau and our much-deserved spa bath after a nice steak in town. The time seemed to fly by, and soon I was dreaming of the bush from the comfort of a good warm bed. It's funny how much you appreciate the simple luxuries of life after a few days tramping and sleeping in huts. Although it was a shame our adventure had to come to an end, we were still buzzing from our experiences. Stewart Island and the Milford Track housed very different types of bush and were wonderful and unique experiences of their own. Doing both was like having two holidays in one, and Leonie's organisation made it a wonderfully seamless experience. It has been many years now since we travelled to the far south and west to Milford, but their impression has never left me. Like photographs in my mind, the sheer pristine beauty is burned into my memory. I feel a great sense of pride and privilege to have been able to visit such wonders. I would encourage anyone to go to Stewart Island at least, and Milford if the body still allows. They are certainly places I will always remember with a sense of awe. The end. That's better. It's nice when I can get these stories complete. I like to take my time because I think I'm able to convey to you just some of the appreciation that I feel for magnificent places like that. And we have a few in the Wairarapa, and I know you do up in the Hawke's Bay too. There's really some magnificent places that you can get to, and some beautiful bush. You know, the Tongariro National Park is not all that far from the Hawke's Bay, and you know, you can get right up round the top past Gisborne up around magnificent little places like Hicks Bay, in the summertime when the pūtakawa are out and flower up round that way. It's just such a magnificent place, those beautiful little beaches, and I really do enjoy, just talking about it makes me want to head back up there again this summer. But also in the Wairarapa, we went out to Castle Point. I was able to give an old man his last trip before he died, and it was rather sad and shocking for other people, but for me it was really good to be able to do that one act of random kindness for somebody who was on his last legs, and it's a nice thing to be able to do to people. And I took a friend up to Castle on the hill there up above the reef, and it's just a magnificent spot to sit and think about life and appreciate being alive, and it really does make me feel good. So, get out there and do it if you can. Okay, and I will catch you again, hopefully a few times before Christmas. I know it's coming up on us really fast, and it's a time to think about family and, maybe just realise that we're not all perfect, and just forgive everyone their shortcomings, even if it's only for a day. But bearing that in mind, I will see you next week, and do what you can for those who are suffering from mental illness. That would be very much appreciated. Thank you very much to Wairarapa TV, our radio, Michael and Veronica especially, and to all the sponsors. Thank you very much for allowing us to do these shows. I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.